The anime begins with a girl named Serafina, who wakes up to find herself chained inside a prison cell, all alone. Before this happened, she was known as the strongest female knight in the West, leading an army in a war against the Barbarians from the East. However, to her surprise, the Barbarians were far stronger than she had expected. Realizing they couldn't win, Serafina did everything she could to create an opening for her troops to retreat, making sure as many of them returned home alive as possible. But then, the barbarian commander suddenly appeared and confronted her, challenging her to a duel, saying he had grown tired of fighting ordinary soldiers. Serafina agreed, thinking this was her best chance. She hoped to keep him busy long enough to give her troops time to retreat. However, to her shock, the barbarian commander was far stronger than she had expected and easily defeated her. But instead of killing her, he simply smiled and declared that she now belonged to him, hinting that he had his own plans for her, which left Serafina shaken with fear. Now back in the prison, Serafina panics, unsure of what to do. She fears that she might be tortured for information, or even worse, treated as an object by them, since the only reason she is still alive is because she is a woman. Her thoughts then turn to her troops. She worries about them, wondering if they manage to escape safely. More than anything, she fears for her kingdom. Without control over the eastern lands where the barbarians rule, the people in the capital may soon struggle with famine and food shortages. Just then, a girl named Circe entered the room and introduced herself as the loyal servant of the man who had captured Serafina. Seeing her, Serafina immediately grew tense, thinking Circe had come to torture her for information. But Circe only looked confused and said she had no idea what Serafina was talking about. She explained that she was there under one order, to make sure Serafina, her master's trophy, was kept in perfect condition. With that, Circe began to undress Serafina, bathe her, and dress her in clean clothes. She even applied scented oils to her skin. This left Serafina completely confused, wondering if this was some kind of barbarian ritual for prisoners. Just then, the barbarian commander entered the cell to see Serafina and introduced himself as Veor, the heir to great chief Ulden One-Eye, also known as the Thundering Voice. In response, Serafina introduced herself as Serafina de la Villon, the youngest daughter of Mattia, the former lord of the Lavalon Margraves of the Ildoran Kingdom, and the commander of the Eastern Expeditionary Force's 1st Company. She then tells him that she has no desire to beg for mercy, as she has prepared for the worse, saying how she knows how inhuman his people are, like from her grandfather, who was a part of the Eastern expedition that happened 20 years ago. Hearing this, Veer became confused and revealed that he had actually brought her here to make her his bride. He explained that he had fallen in love with her the moment they crossed swords. To him, a sword could speak louder than 1,000 words, and from her blade, he felt a deep sincerity. That alone was enough to make him fall for her. What's more, for generations, his clan had a tradition of taking female knights as their bride. This caught Serafina off guard, making her blush as she struggled to believe how ridiculous it all sounded. The story then shifts to 7 years earlier, when Serafina was appointed as the commander of the Eastern Expedition. At the time, no one was happy about it, not even her own brother, because it was very dangerous, especially since she was a woman. Hoping to change her mind, her brother gave her an invitation to a banquet hosted by Countess Ildhall, thinking she might find a husband there and give up on her dream. Having no choice, Serafina agreed to attend. However, at the banquet, no one dared to approach her. Instead, people whispered behind her back, questioning why a woman would choose to become a knight. Even her friends who came to greet her tried to persuade her to give up. They warned her that it would be dangerous, especially since she would be fighting barbarians, who were known to capture female knights and use them as sacrifice. Still, Serafina refused to back down. She said that conquering the East had been the goal of the Ildoran Kingdom since its founding, and as a member of the nobility, it was an honor to fight for the sake of the people and their peace. But her friends still didn't understand. They argued that such things should be left to men, and that a woman's greatest happiness was to marry and manage a household. Hearing this, Serafina grew angry and decided to leave. On her way back, Serafina saw a man being robbed by 3 men, so she stepped in to help. However, after learning that they had no choice and were doing it to survive because they were starving, she decided to show mercy. Instead of punishing them, she gave them her necklace and told them never to do it again. The men gratefully agreed. This moment only strengthened Serafina's resolve. She became even more determined to conquer the East as soon as possible, hoping it would improve the lives of her people. Back in the present, Serafina wakes up, only to be shocked when she finds herself in a room with Veor, who is completely naked. She then starts to panic, trying to remember what happened the night before, but nothing comes to mind. Desperate, she asks Veyor about it. He simply smiles and says he's glad to see she's so full of energy after last night. This only makes Serafina misunderstand the situation even more. In a moment of desperation, she grabs a nearby sword and prepares to take her own life, as the thought of bearing his child is her worst nightmare. But before she can act, Veyor casually knocks the sword from her hand and takes it away. He looks at her in confusion and asks why she would choose to die when she could just try to kill him instead. However, Serafina insists that he doesn't understand. As a knight, attacking an unarmed man, especially one who is naked, would be a disgrace to her honor. As they continued talking, Cersei suddenly entered the room and brought clothes for Veyor. She then explained what had happened the night before to Serafina. Apparently, after Veyor left the cell, Serafina had started vomiting badly due to a mild overdose of the sleeping drugs used to bring her there, and eventually collapsed. Seeing this, Cersei brought her to Veyor for help. Realizing that nothing had actually happened between them, Serafina felt a wave of relief, though she couldn't help but feel annoyed at how confusing Veyor had made everything. Veyor and Cersei then left the room, telling her that breakfast had already been prepared and that they would be waiting for her in the other room to eat together. Left alone, Serafina let out a sigh, unsure of what to do next. Then, out of nowhere, she recalled Veyor's words from earlier, how he had sensed a deep sincerity in her blade, and how that alone had made him fall for her. Thinking about this, Serafina couldn't help but feel a little happy, because throughout her life, she had always been told to give up on becoming a knight, and that her sword skills were meaningless. As she prepared to join them, Serafina braced herself for the worst, expecting a terrible meal since they were barbarians. However, she was shocked to see that they had prepared a large portion of meat just for her. It made her almost drool, because even as a noble, having this much meat was rare. Still, she felt suspicious, wondering why they were treating her so well. Were they trying to win her over? Veer simply sighed and told her to stop overthinking and just eat, assuring her that the food was good. Then Cersei leaned in and quietly told her that the meat had been hunted specifically for her. She explained that Veor had gone on the hunt himself, so she would have something worthy to eat when she woke up. He didn't have to do that. As the son of the great chief, he could have easily ordered his men to do it for him. Hearing this, Serafina felt unexpectedly touched. She decided to try the food and was shocked at how delicious it was. Curious, she asked what kind of meat it was. Instead of answering, Veyor told her to look outside. When she did, she was stunned to realize it was dragon meat. Even so, she didn't feel disgusted and continued eating, unable to deny how good it tasted. After finishing their meal, Veyor told her there was something in the mountains he wanted to show her. However, Serafina refused, as she didn't trust him at all. Besides, it made no sense to wander around lands filled with such dangerous creatures. But Veyor simply smirked and asked if she was afraid. Not wanting to back down, Serafina reluctantly agreed. The moment she stepped outside, she was left speechless by how beautiful the surroundings were, so different from her own kingdom. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Veyor and Cersei suddenly stopped when they reached a waterfall. Serafina couldn't believe her eyes. It was breathtaking, unlike anything she had ever seen before. Then, without warning, Veyor and Cersei began to undress, preparing to bathe, and told Serafina to join them, saying that was the whole reason they had brought her there. This shocked Serafina, and she immediately refused. However, Cersei pointed out that their people didn't have bathhouses, and if she didn't bathe there, it wouldn't be long before she started to smell. Left with no other choice, Serafina agreed. Later, the scene shifts to Cersei and Serafina bathing together, while Veyor is nowhere to be seen. As he had gone to a different stream to give Serafina some privacy and asked Cersei to stay with her to keep her safe. But Serafina doesn't see it that way. She believes Cersei is here to watch her, so she can't escape. She even scolds Cersei for earlier undressing without hesitation in front of a Veyor. But Cersei simply replies that she doesn't mind, as she has grown used to it. While they continue talking, Serafina suddenly notices monsters casually wandering nearby. Panicked, she immediately runs away, even though Cersei calls out for her to stop. After running for a while, Serafina suddenly realized she had left her clothes back at the waterfall. But just as she was about to return, she heard a noise nearby, which made her freeze in fear. She worried that she might run into another barbarian, someone far more savage than Veyor. But instead, a handsome young barbarian stepped out. Seeing her like this, he smiled and guessed that some beasts must have appeared while she was bathing. He then mentioned that it reminded him of his mother, who had been a warrior from the west. She used to tell him stories when he was young about how there was less nature and fewer animals there. Hearing this, Serafina realized that his mother must have been a lady knight from an expedition around 20 years ago, judging by his age. Then, all of a sudden, she began to shiver from the cold. The young man noticed and gently gave her his coat to cover herself, making her blush. She couldn't help but think what a gentleman he was, completely different from Veor, whose first words to her had always been about marriage. But then she started shivering. Again, worried, the young man quickly checked her temperature and carried her, saying he would get her out of the forest as quickly as possible. This made her blush even more. Just then, Circe suddenly appeared and apologized for interrupting them. She then addressed the young man as Master Veor and asked what had happened. Hearing this, Serafina froze in shock, her mind going completely blank. Veor couldn't help but smirk as he teased her, saying all it took was a shave for her to blush like a maiden, which made her embarrassed, and she slapped him across the face. On the way back, Serafina kept complaining to Veor, blaming him for taking her into a place full of monsters. That's when Circe explained that she didn't need to worry, because Veor regularly patrolled the area where dangerous creatures might appear, so the monsters near the waterfall were actually harmless. This made Serafina wonder if the dragon they had eaten earlier was dangerous. Veor replied that it wasn't, saying that although dragons had a wild temper, they were generally quite cowardly. But Circe quickly interrupted him, saying that only he could see them that way. Even if they were herbivores, a dragon of that size was still dangerous to most people. Even so, Veor didn't seem to mind. He said it was a small price to pay since he had gotten to see another side of the woman he loved today. Hearing this made Serafina blush again, and she quickly walked ahead, trying to hide it while thinking about how handsome Veor actually looked without his beard, only to be disappointed the next day when she saw him again with his beard back. The next day, Veor invites Serafina to a gathering in his grand village, explaining that he wants to introduce her to the elders of the various tribes. He casually reveals the location of the settlement, which is called Lakeside Village, the largest village in the region. This immediately shocks Serafina. In her mind, information like that should never be shared so freely, especially with an outsider. She warns him sharply that if she were to escape, it could lead to his downfall. At that, Veor bursts into hearty laughter, leaving her staring at him in confusion. She asks if he's truly that confident. She has no chance of getting away. Instead of answering, he casually changes the subject, reminding her how, yesterday, she had been charmed by his clean-shaven face. Flustered, Serafina denies it, her cheeks reddening as she insists she had only been momentarily confused. Veor simply smiles at her reaction before calmly explaining. It isn't that he underestimates her, it's that such a situation would never arise if she no longer wished to escape. After all, he has already told her of his intention to make her his wife, which, in his mind, also means making her fall for him. This makes Serafina blush, wondering where his confidence comes from. Meanwhile, Circe, watching from nearby, thinks they already look like a couple. Upon arriving in the village, they are quickly surrounded by barbarian soldiers radiating bloodlust. The moment they recognize Serafina as the infamous crystal helmet from the front lines, the crowd closes in. One by one, they urge Veor to let them fight her, claiming their weapons have been itching for battle. Hearing this, Serafina tenses immediately, convinced they're seeking revenge for the many comrades she had slain on the battlefield. Veor then reassures her, telling her that he will handle it. With that, he suddenly shouts, commanding attention. He thanks the warriors for welcoming Crystal Helmet, Serafina, and acknowledges their desire to face a powerful opponent, but firmly states that she must first meet the elders of the village. Almost instantly, the atmosphere shifts. The suffocating bloodlust disappears as if it were an illusion, replaced by an unexpected calm, even friendliness. Watching this unfold, Serafina can't help but wonder if, when he spoke of a powerful opponent, Veor had been referring to her. Still puzzled, she asks why all the soldiers have gathered here. Veor explains that they are actually here to welcome her and hope for a chance to spar with her. That only deepens her uncertainty. She frowns, pointing out that it doesn't make sense. Shouldn't they be seeking revenge instead? That catches Veor off guard, and he asks whether she is really worried about that. But before she can respond, he raises his voice again, calling out to the crowd. He demands to know if any warrior holds a personal grudge against her, and if not, they are to step aside and make way. As if rehearsed, the soldiers move in perfect unison, parting cleanly to open a path without hesitation. Witnessing this, Serafina wonders whether they act purely out of obedience to Veor, or if they truly bear no resentment. Choosing not to dwell on it, she walks forward bravely through the opened path, reminding herself that she is the knight commander of the Eastern expedition, so she cannot afford to lose her composure. Just then, one of the barbarian soldiers steps forward and calls out to her, his eyes glistening with tears. Serafina braces herself for harsh words or a challenge. Instead, to her shock, the man praises the way she fought the other day, calling it magnificent. The words leave Serafina speechless. Other soldiers quickly echo his praise. To them, being able to trade blows with Veor is the mark of a true warrior. Some even add that she is beautiful, believing that someone as strong as her would bear equally strong children. Flustered, Serafina demands to know what they are talking about, reminding them that she is their enemy's commander. But Veor calmly replies that his people truly bear no grudge. To him and his people, strength is valued above all else, and those who prove themselves in battle are met not with hatred, but with respect. His words leave Serafina speechless. The scene then shifts as they walk leisurely through the village, watching the villagers go about their daily tasks. Suddenly, Veor notices smoke rising from one of the houses. He tells Cersei that they are boiling water, and suggests that she and Serafina go enjoy their hospitality, as he has some errands to run and matters to discuss with the elders. With that, Veor calls out to the homeowners. A few women step outside and ask how they can help. Veor politely asks for some hot water for Cersei and Serafina, and casually introduces Serafina as his soon-to-be wife. This excites the homeowners. They comment on how beautiful she is, and quickly drag the red-faced Serafina inside, becoming rather touchy while Cersei follows along. Inside the house, Serafina finds the homeowner, another woman, and 2 children gathered together. The homeowner then jokingly remarks that she means no harm, and hopes Serafina won't take offense. Serafina calmly replies that she doesn't mind. After all, forgiveness is a knight's virtue. The woman then calls to her child named Gatar, asking him to fetch the medicinal tea as the water in front of them begins to boil. She guides him from behind, supervising carefully while praising his efforts. Serafina watches in surprise as they add medicinal herbs directly into the tea. When she asks about it, the woman explains that this is a common practice in their region. Noticing they need more firewood, the children quickly hurry out to gather some, eager to help. Observing this, Serafina is impressed by how strong and capable they are for their age, already showing signs of future warriors. The woman adds that they are simply imitating one another, mentioning that Ina, the other child, has recently been a good role model for Gatar. At that moment, Serafina suddenly realizes that the children are not actually related. When the tea is served, Serafina takes a sip and is immediately struck by its flavor. Seeing this, Cersei is surprised that a noble like Serafina would like it, but she doesn't say anything and keeps drinking. After that, Serafina asks whether communal living arrangements like this are common in barbarian territory, noting that the 2 women do not seem related and that there are only 4 of them. She wonders aloud if their husbands might be among the warriors outside. Hearing this, the homeowner's expression softens with sadness. She gently explains that their husbands passed away long ago during the war in the West, before Gatar was even born, while he was still in her womb. The words hit Serafina hard. She realizes that these women are, in a sense, victims of her own army, of the campaign she led to secure resources for her people. She had always tried to steel herself against such thoughts, telling herself not to feel sympathy for the enemy. But standing here, faced with their quiet resilience, that resolve begins to falter. Struggling with her emotions, she tells them that an apology would never be enough. Instead, she urges them to hate her. After all, she was defeated and taken captive. If they wished to avenge their husbands, they had every right to do so. The women exchange puzzled looks and ask why they would want that. This surprises Serafina, and she tells them that it might have been her who killed their husbands. Still, the homeowner simply smiles gently. She says it is unfortunate that her child does not remember his father's face, but at least the boy was able to be by his father's side when he passed. As for herself, she considers it a blessing that she was left with a child at all. She goes on to explain that such losses are common in their way of life. It is not only war that takes lives. Hunting dragons, battling wild beasts, or facing monsters can just as easy death. Warriors may lose limbs, suffer crippling injuries, or grow old and weak until they can no longer defend themselves. In the end, she says, death is simply an inevitable part of a life tied to battle. The words leave Serafina shaken. She realizes that the warriors she saw earlier, as well as these women, all share a very different view of life and death compared to the people of her kingdom. As they continue talking, a lookout suddenly spots movement in the distance and blows an emergency whistle. Before anyone can react, a creature crashes straight through the house. scaring everyone. Cersei quickly identifies the creature as a species of dragon known as Tsukabikeshi, a beast that hunts by tracking the source of smoke. Yet something about this feels off. These dragons had long since learned not to approach the village after suffering heavy retaliation in the past. But since there's no time to dwell on it, Serafina immediately tells everyone to run. However, just as they try to escape, one of the children starts crying loudly, drawing the dragon's attention and making the situation even more dangerous. Realizing there's no other option, Serafina steps forward and volunteers to hold it back. Cersei refuses at once, saying she could never explain it to her master, Veor, if something were to happen to her. But Serafina snaps back, asking how Cersei expects her to stand by when the barbarians themselves seem so used to death. Without waiting any longer, she grabs a pair of fire tongs from the ground and strikes the dragon with surprising force, knocking it off balance and stunning everyone with her strength. Seizing the opportunity, she orders the others to flee. Still, Cersei hesitates, but Serafina sharply tells her to go as well, explaining that she is only getting in the way. The scene then cuts to Veor, who is swiftly cutting down other Tsukabikeshi in the village. He commands the soldiers to prioritize the villagers' safety and rescue anyone unable to escape in time. In his mind, he assumes that Serafina is already somewhere safe, since Cersei is with her. At that moment, Cersei suddenly rushes to him and quickly tells him what happened. Without saying a word, Veor immediately rushes to the rescue. Meanwhile, back with Serafina, she has managed to draw the dragon into an open space, but she can't outrun it, so she decides to face it head-on. She strikes again with her fire tongs, but this time, the weapon cracks and breaks apart. Thinking her time has come, Serafina closes her eyes. Accepting her fate, she steels herself like a true knight. Fortunately, Veor arrives just in time. He tells her to cover her ears. In the next instant, his voice erupts with overwhelming force, disorienting and blinding the dragon. Before it can recover, he strikes, ending it in a single blow. Afterward, with a gentle smile, he turns to Serafina and thanks her for protecting Cersei and the others. More than anything, he admits he's simply relieved that she is safe. At those words, Serafina's face flushes red. The tension she had been holding back finally breaks, and tears begin to stream down her cheeks as her emotions overwhelm her. Seeing this, Veor says nothing and simply carries her back to safety. If you've come this far, please consider liking and subscribing for more videos like this. Thank